So the objective of today's Ask the Candidates is to provide greater awareness and opportunity to the 3 candidates seeking board seats. Also to assist membership in developing their best informed decisions about the candidates. To engage and foster membership inclusion for good governance practices during COVID-19 meeting limitations. Today, there will be 6 questions submitted by Foxfire members. The nominating committee has condensed wording and combined a few similar questions. This Zoom event will be recorded and available on the Foxfire website within a couple of days. The order of our candidates is random draw, and the candidates will rotate, so each will have the opportunity to be first. They'll have 2.5 minutes per question, with 4 minutes each for their conclusion. Ali Gallahoo will begin asking the first and the 4th questions, followed by Debbie Burkhead asking the 2nd and the 5th question. Mike Mangrone will ask the 3rd and final question. Ali?
Thank you, Chet, and thank you, candidates, for being here, doing this. The first question is going to go to Dr. Cornetta first, and then Christine and Ray will get it final. In your view, what are the keys to working with committees and members of the board for the best strategic results? So Dr. Cornetta, if I can answer that.
Thank you, Ali, and good afternoon, everyone. Keys to working effectively with the board and committees. I think the first essential, I think I will take this off. I think the first essential is obviously to bring a sense of collaboration and cooperation to any of these endeavors. As I've pointed out in the past, I think one has to be proactive in establishing what you want to do, to begin with the end in mind, put first things first, and then to seek to understand the people you're working with, and then seek to have them understand your position. And finally, to synergize, which means try and collaborate to come up with a solution that's better than either party could have come up with on their own. And I think if you look back over the last 3 years during which I've been on the board, the last 2 as president, I've tried to use those guidelines in my interactions with the board and in my interactions with committees. I've served as liaison to the strategic planning and communications committees over the last couple of years. And while I'm not a voting member, this has allowed me to become intimately involved in what they're doing, why they're doing it, and the direction in which they're going, so that I can bring that knowledge to the board and try and communicate it to the members through Foxtails articles, emails to members, messages to members that we send out regularly, etc. I think over the course of the last couple of years, I've probably sent at least 100 different messages to members, as well as being involved in forums when we had them here in the dining room, and in these webinars and virtual forums now. So I think that's the best way to establish a collaborative working relationship with the board and with committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cornetta. The question now goes to Christine, and I'll just read it one more time. In your view, what are the keys to working with committees, I beg your pardon, and members of the board for the best strategic results?
Thanks, Ally, and hello, Foxfire members. Over the last 2 years, I've been very fortunate to be able to work not only with the Communication Committee, but as communication liaison to Health and Wellness and to the Strategic Planning Committee for some time. And what I've learned is that good communication, you have to really listen to understand what members are saying. You have to be able to see and hear their perspective and where they're coming from, and you have to have an open mind to it. I've really enjoyed working with the different members of our board. I feel that we have developed a good working relationship. It takes a while when you're in a team to learn how to work with each other, because we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences. And so those experiences that we come to Foxfire with and that we work with our board and our committees is key to getting the end result. So when you begin with the goal, what is our goal and how are we going to get there? And what are the steps we're going to take? And open and honest discussions and really listening to each other will help us get to that goal. I think the most interesting part of what I've done is on the committee level is getting to know different members from the different committees and to see how they see Foxfire and what they bring to the equation. And that kind of open communication, that open collaboration really brings us to the best end result. And I think we've seen that particularly right now after this master plan vote, because we all worked together so well and we really talked to each other and really listened to each other. And we talked to the members and we wanted you to hear what we had to say. And in particular, what we did is we had an initiative where we asked members to reach back to us and ask us questions and tell us what their thoughts were. And all of that together came to the end result for the master plan, which was a positive outcome, and we're moving forward with that. So listening to understand and working with people and respecting their opinions, I think, is what we need to do moving forward as we keep moving forward with our master plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And finally, to Ray, in your view, what are the keys to working with committees and members of the board for the best strategic results?
Thanks, Ally. Maybe it's just the way I operate, I do business, but I like to give examples of my thoughts, and I think it projects best to understand how I think. So I'm going to do a few things along those lines. And we're talking about the communications, how to best interact with the boards and other committees. So I'm going to throw out a few thoughts, but what I would ask you to do is to look at my resume, which you've already received. And it was presented 3 weeks ago, so it wasn't done for this question. And in my philosophy, it highlights 3 key words: transparency, openness, and accountability. And that's how I believe an effective leader works. We have to get our community involved. Therefore, we have to let them know what's happening. And I noted at the last webinar that in 2015, the board of that time decided to eliminate the forums. And I also noted that in the 2018 annual meeting, I spoke up and I said, in fact, Donald's here, and I remember Donald was answering the questions. I said, why no forums? We're losing the community. We must communicate. And in fact, 45 days later, the forums were recreated. So I'll give you a couple other examples. The 10-year rolling plan, when I was became chairman of the Strategic Planning Committee when it was revitalized, was non-existent. And I felt the best way to let the community know what was happening, and the committees and the board, was to have a standard. And I believe the 10-year rolling plan does that. It's a wish list. It's not what's approved, but it lets everybody know what people are thinking. Number 2, the President's Council. One thing that I've noticed is that the President's Council meets after the board meeting. I think they should meet before the board meeting. They should present their ideas so that when the board meets a few days later in their monthly meeting, they know what those, I believe it's 19 presidents, have heard from their members. It's a better way to interact and to create communication. And finally, with the committee meetings, and I've been on quite a few, I always wondered why the meeting minutes, and I found out were not part of the board packet. I think that the minutes from the committee meeting should be given to the board before the meeting. And if you've been at a board meeting, you know at the end of the meeting, the liaison for the committee kind of summarizes what the committee has done. I would prefer, from a communications point of view, that the liaisons be asked by the other board members what they've heard through the board minute meetings. It's a couple suggestions and ideas. I just think it's a matter of better interaction. We can do it, no problem. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My question will first go to Christine, then Ray, and finally to Dr. Cornetta. Regarding the budget of the master plan, what if the plan elements are more expensive than what was estimated? How do you propose we handle that? Christine?
Thanks, Debbie. That's a really interesting question. And I know that's been a question that was brought up during the master plan initiative also. The budget as it exists for the master plan now was formulated over many, many months of research and work with our consultants and with the engineers. And I think it is the responsibility of a board member to see that we adhere to keeping the plan on budget. In any project, there are always unforeseen things that may happen, something that we did not anticipate. I've done plenty of projects where that's happened. But at the end of the day, what we need to be doing as board members is to be very prudent about overseeing how best to stay within budget. We have the finance and treasurer and Pam Cannon worked very, very hard to put together a comprehensive package that encompassed the costs that were presented for the master plan. And I think that it will be an ongoing, very strategic look at the numbers and the different elements of the plan. But you know, any plan, you don't know what's going to happen, and we may come in under budget. I mean, that may very well happen also. It may be that all those elements will come together, and I think there's been some really good planning in how the different parts of the plan are going to come together in the staging. So I think that I have a lot of trust and confidence in our financial people here, the finance committee, Pam Cannon, and in the board. They've been very strategic in looking at this and the oversight. And I think that I have a lot of trust that moving forward, they will make sure that the plan is implemented as per the costs and the budget that's been approved for it.
Now, Ray, you will answer the question. Regarding the budget of the master plan, what if plan elements are more expensive than what was estimated? How do you propose we handle that? Ray?
Well, I hope it doesn't go over budget as much as the master plan. I've lived with it for 3 years, so I know the components. Let me give you another couple of thoughts and ideas. First of all, one of the things that I think will help us in the budget, in attaining the budget of the master plan, is the fact that we try to eliminate construction of buildings and look rather to the benefits of socialization by outside things like outside dining, the fire pits, the halfway house, which we think is going to help in our expenses because we're going to have less servers to have that done. So we've already considered that in it. Now, other things to think about. When we did the wellness center, the original wellness center in the revitalization initiative was in this building. And I believe it came in at about $1.5 million. Now we're going to have a 6,000 square foot as opposed to about a 2,500 square foot wellness center initially. And the relative cost is about the same. And I give credit to Barry Murphy there because he came back and said, geez, if we put it above the cart barn, we're creating the foundation and we're doing two things at once. So that gets us to the number. I have to bring up the fact that we did, the one thing that's been done already is the pool, the main pool. It was a $204,000 budget when it was proposed to the board, and it came in just about right on budget. So there's an example of how you work to get things done effectively and make it happen. There's other ways that money can be saved, and I'll just throw out a thought, something I've been discussing with Barry Murphy and a few other people, and you should think about it. In 2 years down the road, if you look at the master plan brochure, it's going to be in there with an arrow. It's going to talk about the enhancements of the golf course. I'm pointing this way because to that direction is 1 blue, 9 blue, the practice area. That is to be done in 2 years. And I offer a suggestion, and I'm going to bring it up to the board. Why don't we do it now? It's $460,000 that we will have to restage 2 years from now. If there is any way possible to do that, we should be able to save money just by the staging cost alone. But more importantly, there's another value, and that's the value to the community, because if we do it and get it done by November, then all of us will enjoy it sooner and hopefully at a lower cost. Thank you.
I will now repeat the question for Dr. Cornetta. Regarding the budget of the master plan, what if plan elements are more expensive than what was estimated? How do you propose we handle that? Dr. Cornetta?
Thank you. Well, if we encounter a situation where the project seems to be going over budget, I think the first thing to do is to be preemptive, and that is to exercise careful scrutiny from day one. And I believe we've established a mechanism to do that in trying to organize how to go forward with the master plan. We've established a number of subcommittees, each of which would look at a different component of the project to try and get the best ideas from members and committees connected to that particular project. Those ideas would then be filtered through the construction committee, which would be responsible for oversight of the entire project. And then those ideas would be filtered through to the board. And at every step along the way, the board, the finance committee, strategic planning committee would all be involved in trying to see that the project was proceeding expeditiously and efficiently to prevent this sort of a situation. If we did encounter a situation where we were going over budget on one component, I think we'd have to look at the other components to see if some accommodations could be made there, and look for additional sources of revenue. Could an operating surplus from a given year be used to partly cover the overage? Could we use transfer fees or a portion of transfer fees to establish kind of a contingency fund? Our transfer fees are approximately $200,000 a year. And if we took a portion of that and started saving it, it might give us some wiggle room on any overruns. Or, we could simply decide that there are some features of this that could be delayed for a period of time until we did accumulate the funds. So I think some combination of all these things would be an effective route to solving this problem. Thank you.
My name's Mike Madrone, and I will be asking question number 3. With the COVID situation, there are masking and distancing rules that are not being followed. What can be done by management and the board to improve safety? And secondly, how can safety requirements be best relayed to owners and to renters? We'll start off with Mr. Garrity.
It's a real good question when you consider that I just answered the last question with my mask on, so I must be concerned. Anyway, it's tough because sometimes you forget you have it on, sometimes you forget that you don't have it on. And obviously that's an education process, and we have plenty of signs. And obviously we've gone through many gyrations here to protect people. And for those of us who were here year round, and we saw the extremely limited exposure that people had during the summer months, I guess it's an education of people who were there. So it's got to be an education process. And it starts in many ways. Obviously the website is possible. I get a little concerned because not everybody checks the website. The signs that are posted are certainly fine. Once again, they have to be read when you come in and observe. There's other ways that I can think of. Perhaps it's with the golf course when people go out and the rangers can hand out a little note and say, listen, we're under concern here, so let's help out. So any way we can communicate it on that basis, naturally you support. Now, does it always work? No, it doesn't. And unfortunately, I think it's very important that when there are COVID cases in this community, we know about them. So I champion what Donald has done by letting people know. And I hope that the people that are here and the people that will be visiting either for their winter season or as a renter will take that responsibility and be aware to let people know. I was a COVID survivor, and I got it because my mother, who lives here, got it from her caregiver. So we spent the 2 weeks of quarantine. Actually had no symptoms, but we spent 2 weeks of quarantine to make sure no one here had any issues. And we did a thing that I think I would ask all members to do, which is to let their friends know that they have it. It's not an embarrassment. It's not something that you contracted because you did something wrong. But if you present it to the community so that they do it in honor of respecting the health of others, I think we're better off. Thank you.
Next, Dr. Cornetta will respond to the question, and I'll repeat it. With the COVID situation, there are masking and distancing rules that are not currently being followed. What can be done by management and the board to improve safety? And secondly, how can safety requirements be best relayed to owners and to renters? Dr. Cornetta.
Thank you. Well, as most of you know, I've been intimately involved in this whole problem from day one. Beginning back in March, Donald and I recognized the severity of the COVID-19 problem and took some immediate steps to try and safeguard the community. Those included elimination of gatherings, eliminating dining room services in favor of takeout services, and a number of other things, including communicating with members about the need to wear masks, for hand washing, for cleaning services, for maintaining social distance, and all the other CDC recommendations. Unfortunately, the Foxfire Community Association is not a police force, so we have to rely on the goodwill and consciences of our members to do the right thing. We've, in the months since March, have sent out over 40 different communications to members, reminding them of these rules, encouraging them to follow them. We've sent out advice to returning members, saying what they should do, depending on where they're coming from and whether they should quarantine for a period of time, et cetera. So I think we've done about everything we can possibly do to keep members informed of the steps that are necessary to keep things safe. We've reported to members any cases within Foxfire that have been known to us. We haven't identified those individuals, but we've made members aware that there are cases, and any members who have approached us with questions, we've been honest in our answering as to how they should respond if they've been exposed to somebody who's had COVID-19. So we've tried to conduct as many activities outside as possible. We've opened windows and doors whenever possible, and we've eliminated singing and dancing, etc. So those are the steps that I think we've taken and need to continue to take. Thank you.
The next person to respond will be Christine, and I'll repeat the question. With the COVID situation, there are masking and distancing rules that are not being followed. What can be done by management and the board to improve safety? And how can safety requirements be best relayed to owners and to renters? Christine?
Thanks, Mike. I think the best thing we can do is lead by example, all of us. As Dr. Cornetta referenced, I do believe that Foxfire has done an exemplary job in managing our community here during this COVID pandemic. The communications that have come from Dr. Cornetta and our general manager, Donald Shea, in their weekly newsletters, the information on the website, the medical advisory committee, the steps that have been taken to provide socialization safely have been very effective, as we can tell that, as we know, that the incidences here at Foxfire have been very limited. I think we should be very proud of how Foxfire has handled this. And I think for members that are not social distancing, not wearing a mask, I think that sometimes having a nice conversation and a gentle conversation with that particular person would not be out of line if you know that person. But at the end of the day, I feel that our community, Foxfire, and our management has just done an exemplary job. And I think that moving forward, we will still be able to enjoy all of our amenities here at Foxfire in a safe environment.
Thank you, Christine. Okay. The next question is going to go to Dr. Cornetta first. Why or why shouldn't Foxfire initiate reserves for golf course repairs?
Thank you, Ali. Well, the whys and the why nots. As you know, in our budgeting process, we have two capital funds, the Capital Repair and Replacement Fund, which covers plant and equipment and property that's on a predictable schedule of depreciation and replacement. And there are only a couple of golf course components covered in that category, and those are primarily the irrigation system and the pump houses and the bunkers. The capital improvement fund has no monies specifically directed at the golf course. It's been the articulated desire of our members over the years that golf course improvements would be paid by special assessment rather than sequestering money in reserves for that purpose. I personally think that it would be beneficial to begin to reserve money specifically for golf course improvements, whether that came from allocation, as I mentioned in the last question, allocation of some transfer fees to a fund designed specifically for the golf course, or to add a small amount each month to our contribution to the capital improvement funds, which currently is $125 a quarter, or $500 a year. I think preparing for these foreseeable expenses is a prudent way to do business and to avoid these large assessments that come up for what are completely predictable expenses. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bonetta. The same question now to Christine. Why or why shouldn't Foxfire initiate reserves for golf course repairs?
I have to admit, this is an area I have not spent a lot of time with in terms of, even though I just did read the financials that came out, and I've learned that Foxfire has not traditionally reserved for golf course improvements. So that I'd have to better understand why that is and why we choose to do special assessments. I know that right now Fox Hollow is working on a very big unexpected project, and we are now facing the same question. Why were we not reserving for some of these repairs that we need to do? And it'd be wonderful to have a crystal ball and be able to see into the future and make those decisions. But I'd have to defer to certainly the information that Dr. Cornetta just presented to you, because that's what I have learned in listening to board meetings and listening to members. And I would think that that is certainly an open discussion that can be had, and to see how members feel about it. But I can't make a decision one way or the other right now, because I can't say that I know exactly what the answer is, and I'd have to defer to our finance committee and our treasurer and members and leadership that's been here for a while, and to better understand the logic and reasoning behind that. So at this point, I can't give you a concrete answer to that, but I think that I am very open to the discussion, and we're very willing to listen to both sides of that question.
Thank you, Christine. And finally to Ray, why or why shouldn't Foxfire initiate reserves for golf course repairs?
We all have to pay the piper. So either we pay it in a lump sum or we pay it off over time. And quite frankly, when Ally read the question, I had to think quick, because I hadn't thought about it, because we're going to spend $2 million on the golf course. So here's my thoughts. I agree. We should be reserving the money for a couple of reasons. One, let's look at what we just did, or we just voted on. $2,470 one time, or whatever it is, $25 over 10 years. So we take a one-time payment, and we realize some of that goes to the bocce and to the tennis. I'm going to say roughly $2,100 is going towards that $2 million that's going to be used to improve the 27 holes with grassing and irrigation. My quick numbers tell me that it's probably about every 15 years, and I won't look at Donald because he may nod yes, and I don't need, this is my answer, so I'm not looking this way. But if it takes every 15 years to regrass a golf course, and that's a $2 million spend, my numbers come up to about $140 a year, and roughly a little bit more than $10 a month if we were contributing to it. Doesn't seem that bad when you start to bring it to small denominations, but it's still an expense. Ultimately, it becomes an expense, but there's other ways to look at that spread, and that's why I think it's a good idea that we consider reserves. Because the cost can be spread into a reserve using a variety of ways. We can allocate from our cart fees. We can look at the reciprocal and any other guest fees that we get and dedicate a portion of that to go towards the improvement. Finally, there's some other possibilities in there because, you know, we may want to look at when a renter comes in and we take part of that transfer fee. My point is we could subsidize the cost for the reserve to mitigate the overall expense to us by the allocation of funds we already have. And if you look at it that way, then the concept of reserving funds becomes far more palatable because then it does not become the one-time hit that we're now experiencing, which is roughly $2,100. Thank you.
My final question will go to Christine first. Thinking 5 years from now, are there capital improvements or repair projects that Foxfire should be preparing for now?
I have to admit, that's a tough question. I don't know that I'm well versed on all of the ongoing capital improvements that we may need moving forward. I know that I am a pretty quick study and I could come up to speed pretty quick, but I'd have to have more history and more background and more knowledge in terms of how all of this comes together in terms of how we budget out for capital improvements and what those capital improvements would be. The financial part of what happens here at Foxfire can get very complicated from the beginning, but I think once you get into it, you begin to understand it, and you begin to understand, or I begin to understand, the capital improvement fund, the repair fund, what goes into that, how that comes together. But I certainly can't speak to it right now, and I'm just being really honest with you. I'd have to spend some time with it. I'd have to have more information. I'd have to be able to analyze it. I'd have to be able to speak to other people about it to get a really good concept of what that would look 5 years into the future. And then I think I can make a very educated decision on that, but I would have to have more information, more substance in order to make that decision.
Okay, this question will go to Ray now. Thinking 5 years from now, are there capital improvements or repair projects that Foxfire should be preparing for now?
Actually, I've been involved in this. When I became chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, I noticed something. We had a 10-year rolling plan that had not been updated for 4 years. And along with my committee, we went through and we asked the President's Council, the various committees heads to give us their input so that we could create a new rolling strategic plan. We had 110 suggestions, as I recall, and some were multiples. Obviously, there was one that I think we got up to 12. So I guess I have a knowledge of what's there because I've been involved in it. But let me just give you a couple thoughts that you should be planning for. And they're not in any particular order. But one of the things that we were concerned about was rebranding, because we are going to be looking to bring in new owners. So perhaps we need to change the image of Foxfire, if that includes logos and walls and whatever else. Anyway, onto the walls. For 12 years, the Davis Wall has been shown as an item that we need to address, but it has not been addressed. So certainly within the next 5 years, we should have plans to do something there and with radio, because radio offers us a unique opportunity. You see, the radio wall doesn't run full length along Radio Road. It actually cuts in when you get towards the entrance. That piece of land in Foxtail is very important to us because it's a recreational area and it's a potential site for pickleball. So that's another thing to consider. In doing that, it's going to require a PUD amendment. And if you're going to do the PUD amendment, you should do everything, not just one or two certain items. So we should also be planning for the possibility of a PUD amendment approach to the county, certainly after we do the master plan, because we don't want to confuse them. But we should be considering that because there may be some other things we want to change in Foxfire that will come up later. We also have to consider the entrances and our appearance, because one thing that we hear about is that the community doesn't project itself as well to a new owner as they come down, particularly Davis Boulevard. And then there's other expenditures that you have to look at down the road, like the golf carts, and that's projected for 2022. So I invite all of you to go to the website and to look at the 10-year rolling plan, which is just a wish list. It is no confirmation of spends, but it's an idea of where Foxfire may be 5 years from now. Thank you.
I will now ask this question to Dr. Cornetta. Thinking 5 years from now, are there capital improvements or repair projects that Foxfire should be preparing for now?
Thank you. In 2018, when the ad hoc committee on the revitalization initiative was put together, one of their recommendations was that we rejuvenate and revitalize the strategic planning committee. And the board approved that, and we appointed a brand new strategic planning committee, which at that time was headed by Mr. Garrity. And part of that strategic plan was the 10-year rolling strategic plan, which, as was indicated earlier, is really a wish list. Through his tenure as chairman of that committee, and then Barry Murphy, who took over about 6 months ago, the rolling strategic plan has continued to roll along slowly, if you will. There are a number of items on that plan that certainly should come up for consideration over the next 5 to 10 years. The perimeter walls along Davis and Radio Road are one. The condition of our gates, landscaping of the gates, landscaping around the clubhouse and along Kingsway, lighting in the community, sidewalks, and Ray already mentioned pickleball. That piece of property by Radio Road is zoned residential, if you can believe it, but it would need to be changed to recreational in order to put pickleball courts here. But that's potentially a good site for pickleball because noise would not be an issue in that location. There are no houses in the immediately adjoining areas, and there's a lot of noise from Radio Road already. But that would require opening the PUD, and we would want to do that only once and include everything in the community that we would want to revise and improve under that PUD amendment. So, those are some of the things that are on the horizon, and I'm sure with the passage of time, the committees and members will come up with some additional ideas, which will go through the process, and if appropriate, will be put on that list. Thank you.
Part number 6 is not really a question, it's an opportunity for the candidates to give a concluding and summary statement as to why they think you should vote for them. And I'll remind them that they have 4 minutes for this part, and we're going to start with Mr. Garrity.
I've been through this last week and this week. I'm enjoying it. I would enjoy it more if I had my glasses so I can read, because this is the only part of the presentation where we were told what we were going to get. So I'll say this. And first of all, thanks for participating in this board candidate Zoom meeting. As I noted in the previous Zoom webinar of January 11th, your vote will decide the makeup of a new board that faces the significant challenges presented in the recently approved master plan. It will shape the future of Foxfire for many years, and I trust I have provided to you today an insight into my ability to lead this community as a board member. Greater transparency, openness, and accountability were key goals that I mentioned today. Getting our members more involved in our community should be a paramount concern. If Foxfire is to grow effectively, we must make certain our community is well informed. So during these short answer periods, I can only touch on my vision for Foxfire's future. I can assure you I will listen to your thoughts and suggestions as we continue to improve our community. The responsibility placed upon a member of Foxfire Board of Directors is not something I take lightly. I counted it up, and during our 18 years here, I have worked with 8 different board presidents as I served on multiple committees. These appointments afforded me the opportunity to meet and thankfully become friends with so many Foxfire members. I have never taken lightly the accomplishments of those community leaders. I fully understand what is expected of me if I am elected. That is not just about winning an election. It's about continuing the legacy of dedicated community service, striving to make Foxfire the perfect place to live. I am ready for this challenge. As I did on January 11th, I ask you to consider my dedication to Foxfire, my willingness to volunteer for our greater good, and most importantly, the successes I have been able to achieve working with others. I am confident that my professional business experience and my efforts to make Foxfire better have prepared me for this opportunity. I promise you that I intend to become a board member who will protect your investment here. I will be willing to listen to your suggestions and then give you a straightforward answer as I provide my opinions. While we may not always agree, I will always welcome alternative thoughts. It is, in my opinion, the best way to learn, as you have to listen, then analyze, and finally make informed decisions. This is what I think a leader does. They bring people together as we seek a common goal. In summary, I thank you for joining the Zoom meeting today. I appreciate the opportunity to answer the questions you presented to us today, and I hope my responses have given you an insight into my ability to lead this community. I ask for your support as I seek a position on our board of directors. I am ready to serve. Thank you.
The next person to respond to this will be Dr. Cornetta to offer his concluding or summary statement as to why he thinks you should elect him to this position. And again, he has 4 minutes, Doctor.
Thank you. And I want to thank all the members who attended this Zoom forum, taking the time to listen to the three of us and hopefully help shape your voting choice. I've had 3 years of experience on the board, 2 as president, and in that time, I believe I've established really collaborative working relationships with Donald and his staff, with the other board members, with committee members, and with members at large. I have an intimate knowledge of the community and of the master plan, how we got to this master plan, why it looks the way it looks, how it's to be financed, and how we envision it going forward. I have a record of communication, transparency, negotiation, and collaboration, having probably written more than 100 different communications to members over the last 2 years, and been involved in forums and events of this kind. I'm proud to have been a part of the team that put together the master plan that was enthusiastically endorsed by a majority of members. And I'd like to be a part of the team that implements this master plan and gets us to the final product efficiently and expeditiously. I love living in Foxfire, and I want it to be the best possible community we can make it. I appreciate your listening to me. I appreciate your support, and I ask for your vote in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Last but not least, Christine will respond by offering her conclusion and summary statement as to why she thinks you should vote for her for this position. And again, you have 4 minutes, Christine.
Thanks, Mike. When I was approached and asked if I would consider running for the board, I gave it a lot of thought. And I said to myself, what would I bring to the board that would be of value to this community? And I looked back on my business experience of running our company and all the different projects that we worked on and how we built our company and how we had goals and we achieved those goals. I looked at my community service experience that I was able to work with the community to make it a better community in where we lived. And I also looked at the last 2 years of the work that I've done here at Foxfire on the communications committee in particular, and everything that I've learned so far. I feel that I would work very well with the board and with the other committees. I bring a tenacity and an integrity to the board. I would bring to the board. And I think that as we, especially this board moving forward with the work for the master plan and other projects moving forward, I would bring a very strategic and very disciplined approach to making those decisions as a board member. Not many people know me. I've gotten to meet a lot of new people, and which I really appreciate being able to do that. And I think that my commitment to this community would add value to the board. And I ask that you consider that. I appreciate you listening and getting to know me a little better. And I ask for your vote, and I'll do the best I can for you and for the community. Thanks.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Panetta, Christine, and Ray. That was excellent. We missed some of the audio in the beginning, so I'm just going to go back and restate a couple of things. First, appreciate your dialing in because of the coronavirus. Doing this virtually is terrific. We have had 2 sessions for the benefit of the membership and the candidates because it's more difficult to get together right now. Today's format, the questions were provided by the members. The candidates did not have an opportunity to see the questions beforehand, so it was intended would be similar to just a casual event that they might speak at a pool and people would ask questions. Now there were more questions submitted, and our intent is to offer those questions to the candidates to answer. And the answers will be posted on the website under our page that we have now, Meet the Candidates. So that'll be on the website. And if you go to Member Central, there'll be a link from there. So again, I want to thank the nomination committee, Roger Saunders as chair, Ali Gallahue, Debbie Burkhead, and Mike Mangrone for really done a tremendous job. It's surprising, it takes more time than you initially think for these things. I want to thank Kathy O'Brien for facilitating the meeting and supporting all our Foxfire participants. Do you have a number, Kathy? No?
No, I do not.
All right, sorry. And anyone who observed this from home, registered and watched, you don't be sure to get your glass of wine or beer. Let's see. I think we have 3 excellent candidates. And the ballots have been mailed. You should receive them. They need to be back before the annual meeting at 9 o'clock on February 13th. Great. Have a great afternoon, and I hope you enjoy your glass of wine.